let's talk about everything I made in 2023. Woo! Hello, my name is Emily Crow from The Cozy Crow and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, I am finally going over everything I made in 2023. And this video is a little bit late because I got hit with like every sickness imaginable right after Christmas. I had the flu, I had pink eye, I had a cold. Now I'm here, hopefully well for the next little bit. And I'm really excited to go over everything that I made last year. It's definitely more than I thought, considering how busy things got. I started a full-time job in February, and so my making totally derailed compared to where my goals and plans were at the beginning of the year because my life season just changed greatly. All good things. But it's really interesting to go back and see what I worked on and how that reflects the season of life that I was in, that I currently am in, as I didn't do all the things that I had anticipated from the beginning of the year, and I did things more on a day-to-day basis or on a week-by-week basis of picking which projects I wanted to work on, of applying for tests, things like that. So let's get right into it. First, I'm gonna go through everything I made, just run through the list really quickly, show you what I have if I have it, pop a picture up if I don't have it. And then once I'm done going through everything I made, then we'll talk about statistics and a couple of questions that I'm answering from Instagram about like favorite makes, yarns, things like that from my year. I've just been really enjoying knitting, and so I'm embracing that. I also spent a lot of time reading, and so you'll see in the rebrand of my channel that I am going to be including a lot more book-related content because I read 125 books last year, which is amazing. A lot of them were audiobooks, but I also made time to listen to myself and not just knit and crochet whenever I had free time, but make time for family, make time to read, to kind of close out the evening. And it definitely helped my sleep hygiene to read instead of like watch YouTube and knit right before bed, and just kind of find more balance in all the different facets of my life. That was kind of a focus of mine this year, but I still was able to make a lot of things. In total, I have 53 finished objects, which is amazing. So let's get right into it. This month, I came out with my first pattern of 2023. This is the Wonderland hat. And as a result, I made 4 versions of this hat. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, C and D. So what happened was I just was inspired. So I was inspired. I was loving this pattern. It was just so fun for me to make. So I made all sorts of different sizes. This is a child large, and I found that it was just a little bit small on my head, just a little bit more snug than I wanted to wear. So this was my first sample, and then I decided that I wanted to make one for myself. So this is the sample that I currently wear. It's more of the fitted fit, so not slouchy to begin with. I also have this little newborn hat, mostly as a double check for my grading, because that was like a really fun, quick thing to make. And then this is for my toddler. Well, I guess she's a preschooler now, she's 3, but this is the size that fits her head. And so I've got a nice little stack of hats. Some of these I hope to give away, but I just don't have a head on which to give them. And so I'm just hanging on to a couple of these that are not used in my family in a bin of things that I hope to donate or to give as gifts one day. So that's what those are, but these two are definitely in rotation a lot. Let's see, this gray one is made from Wool of the Andes worsted. That's knit picks or recrochet yarn, and that's left over from my Wonderland sweater. And then these are made from the same pink yarn. I can't remember. It was some kind of like Red Heart acrylic yarn or something. I can't remember. And then this one is Plymouth Yarn's Homestead Tweed in the color, I think the color may be burgundy or something, but love, love, love this hat. So it was a good stash buster, made with acrylic yarn, made with leftovers, and even just purchasing a random skein of worsted weight yarn. I loved everything about this. I should make more of them because it's been a little bit. I also made another hat. This is the Musselburgh by Ysolda Teague, and I made this pattern once before this year, and I actually made a couple of these out of self-striping yarn. I participated in Desert Vista Dye Works monthly sock club. Because of that, I needed to make something out of their yarn every single month of the year. So I made a hat at the very beginning of 2023. I think this colorway is called Mermaid Party, And I just thought that with the different blues and grays, they kind of worked well together, so it wouldn't be super obnoxious as like a stripy hat, but it was still really fun. My first Musselburgh that I made was a little bit bigger, and so I really like how this one fits me a lot better. I wear it quite often. And then the last thing I have to share with you before I share a couple things that I don't currently have in my possession. These are the Spruce socks by Originally Lovely. Caitlin Bartold, I think, is the designer's name. Didn't even write that down. Pulling that out of my brain. But I use this colorway Beck from Mezzo makes Fibres. And then this is Wilbury Fibre Co.'s Vintage Ornament that I had as like a leftover. Sorry, these socks are clean, but there's like lots of pills and stuff on them. And I heavily modified this pattern, but I made matching socks for my whole family, hopefully for Christmas Eve 2022. And then I didn't finish these until January 2023. So we didn't wear matching Christmas Eve socks, but we still had matching socks, which is fun. I used this like slip stitch textured pattern to do the spruce trees on them. And I modified the sock to make it so that these trees were on the very top of the sock rather than on the side. And it actually worked out easier than I thought it would. It definitely took a little bit of like figuring it out, but I just kind of went for it and it actually worked out well. Other things that I made in January that I don't have to share with you. I have my brother's socks that I made him out of Stroll yarn. This was supposed to be a Christmas present. Again, life got too busy and I did not get them to him by the end of 2022, but we were planning on meeting for Christmas, and so I had like a very strict deadline, but then horrible storms, flights were canceled. Our flight was pushed forward like 3 times, and then by that point, we just had to cancel our flight because it was not worth spending all the money to be on the other side of the country for just like 2 days. So we rescheduled our flight for January. So that strict deadline of finishing things by Christmas, by seeing all my family for Christmas, was not in place anymore. So I gave myself a little bit of leeway and just worked on these, and then I shipped them off to my brother. I used Train Station, I think is the Stroll colorway, and it's like a black gray variegated that he picked. Not my favorite to work with because of the color, but I made them. Also, he has very big feet. Those were like shorty socks, but they took a long time, I felt like, because they just like would never end because he's a lot taller than me. And then I also made, as like a fun little joke, I made some kitten mittens with some of that leftover. And I don't know if I have pictures of all 4 of them, but I think I have pictures of my cat wearing the kitten mittens because my brother has a cat. And I thought it would be funny to make some socks to match him and his cat together. I'm sure his cat hasn't actually worn them. It was just something fun, something really quick to do. And so I made these little kitten mittens, just tried it out, and I fit them to my cat. So don't know if my brother ended up using them or if he's thrown them out by now, but it was just something fun and I'm counting it as a finished object. I also have one thing that I could not find anywhere. I'm not sure where it went. Maybe it's lost in my car somewhere, but the Candy Mountain mittens was a test knit that I did for Twin Stitches Designs. I used some scrap yarn and a couple like pink and red type of colors. I made them for my daughter and she loved them. They're super cute. I don't know where they are. I feel like we just used them like a week ago, so I really don't know. But I do have a picture, so I can share it with you right there. All right, we're moving into February, and I made this huge shawl. I don't even know where's the front. It's this way. The Find Your Fade shawl by Andrea Mowry. It's impossible to show on camera. It's so big. I made this using Sorella yarn and I'd been working on this for a while, but I really wanted to finish by Valentine's Day. I think I had like a work training or something, and so I got to wear it on Valentine's Day. It is huge, and these long tails make it a little bit harder to wear, so I don't wear it very often because it's just huge. And I honestly was kind of tired of working on it just because it is so big. It takes 4 full skeins of finger weight yarn, and I used up basically all of my yarn making this. But it's got an interesting shape, which is fun. There's definitely some lace details, and this color palette is just really pretty. Oh, and I also had to add in a different color for the last couple rows just because I ran out. Awesome. So the shading is just slightly different. I don't know how well you can tell that, but it blends in well enough. And then I also finished a pattern test. This was my first finished garment of the year, and this is the Split Decision Pullover. Let me find the front of it. I think it was worn like this. The Split Decision Pullover. I'll pop up some pictures so it's easier to see. Whoops. Dropping things. But this is a test knit for Tiff Nielan, and I used Malabrigo Arroyo in the colors Neverland and Tranquilo. Neverland is this pinky color, and then the purpley color is Tranquilo. And it's got this really interesting hem with like herringbone stitch. Though I'm thinking about pulling it out. I should try it on again just to see exactly how it fits now and how I'd want it to fit. But I want to make a little bit of adjustments to it. So something I still want to fix, but it's really comfy. This yarn is like, got a really good drape, and it's just like really comfy and cozy. Nice little like sweatshirt feeling sweater, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of that has to do with the yarn in particular that I chose. Another test knit I did in February was the Hearth socks by Northwoods Knit Co. I adore these socks. First of all, I love these colors. I used red door fiber in, I have my notes in front of me, which is helping a lot. The Found Family sock set. And this sock pattern is cool because it has twisted stitches, it's got cables, it's got purl bumps, so there's just like a lot of fun texture. And they were really fun to work up. I had a lot of fun doing this pattern. I also made, in here I only have one pair, but I made 2 pairs of Journey socks out of this color from Desert Vista Dye Works as my February projects. This is the color Valentine Roses. I made a pair for myself and a pair for my sister-in-law out of this colorway. And I had made the first sock basically to pattern. It was a little bit tighter. I gave it to her because she doesn't have as high of arches as me. And then I used my knowledge from the first sock to kind of tweak some of the other socks. So my socks ended up having a slightly taller heel flap and a slightly longer open foot before I joined right here. And it's still not a perfect fit, but the more I wear these, the more I really like them. I should make more of these. I have plenty of scraps of Desert Vista Dye Works yarn, so I can make tons of fun stripy socks in this pattern. It is only sized in one size, like a 64 typical stitch count sock, but it's not hard to make adjustments. It is constructed differently than a typical sock construction, but nothing super hard. I think you would just need to follow the pattern once, and then you would get a better idea on how you can modify it in a way that fits your foot if you need a different stitch count or if you want to make adjustments like I did in certain lengths and heights and things. Here we travel into March, and I'm in the thick of working at an ICU, my first job back in like a year and a half, working as a nurse and being full-time, traveling a lot to get to work. And so it was a lot, and you can kind of see this is where my makes definitely start to transition to being more comforting, more mindless. If I'm doing tests, they're usually just smaller projects. So here are some more Journey socks. The colorway is called Hydrangeas. Again, I made a pair for myself and I made a pair for my sister-in-law for Desert Vista Dye Works monthly sock club in the month of March. And let's see, oh, the Journey socks, I don't know if I mentioned, are from Heidi and Lana. So again, like I said, this part is lengthened a little bit, and I think I increased the heel flap, though I think I would do things a little differently if I made these socks again. When I make these socks again. I also made a pair of socks for my friend Olivia. When I had lived in California, she had asked me about making socks for her, and people don't normally ask me that, and she was one of my closest friends there, so I was happy to oblige. She told me she wanted gray and red striped shorty socks, so I did that. I think I have a picture. I'll share with you if I do. I used some leftover Knit Picks Stroll and Strawberry that I had in my stash, and I also used Langyarn's Jowl in some gray, like heathery color. And I made these socks for her. I'm really happy with how they turned out. And she was able to open them like her birthday week, and she got the package on a day where she was feeling not so great. And so it was like a good chance to share my love with her over long distance. So I'm really glad that I was able to do that for her. All right, I've got a test knit for you. This is Tahitian Sunset by Megan Gonzalez, and I used a sock set for this. I think I did the smallest size, and I barely had enough yarn of this contrast color, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend using a sock set unless you're okay using 2 minis, or like you might need to supplement with a very similar color on like a couple rows on the last mini. Like I literally had only like a yard or 2 left, so beware. But there's this really cool, like there's a little bit of lacy texture. I like how this end, it's kind of hard to share, but it's a bandana cowl. It's got this cool lace bit right here, and it adds kind of like a little bit of a wave texture on the bottom. Super fun to knit, not super big. I'm glad I could use up a sock set doing this because I use Explore Knits and Fibers In the colorway To the Sea is the main colorway, and then Tide is the contrast color. And it had just been sitting in my stash for a while, so it was really good to use that up. And that's another thing. I tried really hard this year to use stash yarn for test knits. I want to continue that on into 2024, but that was really helpful for me, especially with my schedule for work, to be able to say, like, I already have the yarn for this. I definitely feel like I can hit this deadline. Let's sign up for this test knit. Okay, the next thing I finished was another design that I designed in 2023. This is the Sweet Pea Small Shawl. And I use Wheat Crochet Hawthorne base in the colors, ooh, let's see. I think this one, you can see it's like more blue, and pink is Cobbler Speckle. This one is Surprise Speckle. It's got some like yellows in it. And this purple is called Andromeda Speckle. And this was just an experiment for me. I had a vision in mind. When the yarn came that I had requested, I was given yarn support for this pattern, which I'm so grateful for. Thank you, Wheat Crochet. But the colors did not end up working together as I had hoped. And so I just kind of tried things out. I did a fade from one speckle color to the other. And I also intermixed it with this peacoat mesh type of different texture. And I made this closure on one side. So this is kind of how you wear it. So a little bit different than other shawls. It kind of comes with its own little clasp. And so even though it's a smaller size shawl, it has a closure to kind of keep it on so you don't have to worry as much about like wrapping it around you multiple times, being a smaller size. It used like 2.5 skeins. This is crochet. I designed it. It didn't turn out exactly how I'd hoped, but I had to be kind of resourceful. I just tried something new and experimented with it. We are now into April, and this was my favorite make of 2023. I talked about it in my top 10 makes of 2023 video that I released in Vlogmas, so make sure to check that out. But this only took me a week. It took me like 8 days to make, I think. And this is a Ranunculus by Midori Hirose. I use Treehouse Knits in the color, I piggybacked from a Pizza Dough Freezer in their DK Organic Non-Superwash base. It's beautiful, like gray blue. I have worn this a lot, and I only purchased 2 skeins. I wish I had a little bit more because it's just like a smidge short, and the sleeves are just a smidge shorter than I would prefer, but it's still wearable for me. So even with its flaws, due to me only ordering 2 skeins, it's still my favorite. So if I make this pattern again, it's gonna be a favorite again, I'm sure. It was so quick to make. The gauge was really fun and easy. This yarn was a dream. I really enjoyed working with this yarn base. And this yoke was so fun. Just some really interesting textures, unlike anything I've done before. So this was just like a fun, fresh make, doing something a little bit new with the yoke, but nothing super hard or really intense. And then for the rest of the sweater, it was super easy to make, which is exactly what I needed at that time. Then I tested the Mini Crochet Yarn Cozy by Natalie Coons of Knitty Natty. I used some stash yarn. You can see I made a ribbed version. I don't use this as much because I forget that I have the mini size. I remember the larger, like the full size skein cozies that I have, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but I forget I have the mini size. So I should use this more often. I just reorganized a little bit, and so I recently found this again, and so I'm excited to put it to good use. My April Desert Vista Dyework socks were the colorway Succulents. I did a heel flap and gusset. You can see I kind of mixed and matched a lot between my heels, but I really feel like a heel flap and gusset I found fits my foot better than a Fish Lips Kiss heel, even though that is a really fun heel to do. And they feel nice wearing them, but then the way that the sock stretches, the heel flap and gusset tends to fit me better longer. I used some random green mini that I can't remember what it's called. I hoped it would match better. I think it still goes with it, but it's not exactly the same color in here. But I really like this colorway. It's really fun how it's like alternating between different shades of green and then different shades of like a pinky purple. Super fun. And then another test knit that I tested in like January, February. I didn't finish until April, which it isn't as long as other test knits. This is the Heartsplosion Socks by Alindria Knits. And like I said, I tested this pattern and I use, let's see, this is Cascade Heritage 220 in this like gray color. It's like charcoal or iron forge, or something along those lines. It's not a true black. And then this pinky variegated color is called Shop Around the Corner from Woolberry Fibre Co. Heartsplosion, right? She's got at least one other pattern I can think of that has this same style, that's got shamrocks, like shamrock in Around the World or something. I can't remember. But if you like this all over color work, she's got quite a lot of patterns related to that. These were fun to knit up, but they took a long time. I also learned how to do the ladder back jacquard style of color work, which was different. It was good for me to learn that. I definitely need more practice. I have a little bit of puckering on the sock, but with so much color work, I'm really proud of myself for how well it does look despite a little bit of puckering. So I'm still learning. Okay, so I talked about the yarn cozy that I made for a test knit, and then I decided to make a couple of the knit yarn cozies. I'll talk about one now in the month of May, and this one is currently being used in a project, but this is a mystery colorway from Daisy Stitch Co. And I did these cable stitches around, and yes, I use this quite often. I need more of these, especially when I work on bigger projects that use more than one color. It would be good to have more of these. They're fun and quick to make, and they're a great way to use up some stash yarn if you're not using them for like socks or small bits of color work or things like that. So good stash buster. I tested a pattern for Jamie Lomax of Pacific Knit Co. This is the All Together Now sock, and I made the size for my daughter. That's kind of been my in for working on pattern tests, is if they have a child size available, I'll do the child size because fewer people volunteer to test the child size. So hot tip there, if you have someone to try on a child size, volunteer for the child size of the thing. So this sock, it's looking a little bit grungy because toddlers, socks get grungier for toddlers. But all of these colors are some mystery yarns that I got from Daisy Stitch Co. Just pulled them from my stash. And then this white yarn, I can't remember what it is. I grabbed it at some random yarn store because I just needed something white. This is a really fun color work design, and it definitely plays on holding different yarns dominant. So I made the new color on any given color work section, the dominant color, and then the other color would be the, I'm thinking recessive. There's a different term for it. That was just for me personally to like keep things in order and keep the like color dominance regular throughout the whole sock. Another test knit that I did was the Lothlorien socks by Megan Gonzalez. I did test a few of her designs because we are friends online, and I really love her style and her designs. She's really great to work with as a tester. It gives you tons of time, is really accessible, and all around, it's always been a great experience to test for Megan. These are the Lothlorien socks. There's this beautiful lacy pattern, and I was like, man, I need to do more lacy socks. So pretty. I didn't use the colorway she used from Long Dog Yarns, but I did use a sock set from Long Dog Yarns from the same collection, the Lord of the Rings collection, to test this pattern because I thought it'd be fun. The yarn I used was the White Wizard sock set. And then finally, I did my May Desert Vista Dye Work socks. I held my yarn double. This is the color Ashes, and so they're DK weight, but they are marled, which is like super fun. I always have a really fun time when I marl my self-striping yarns just to see kind of how they work up. And they're nice and cozy, super bright. I like this colorway a lot. And sometimes you just need a really simple DK weight sock, something quick to work up. All right, big moment for June. I had 2 sock designs included in Knitty Natty's Sock Week. And these are the Shark Bite socks that I designed. I designed this sock in knitting and in crochet, and they match. So I actually only have one clean of each because I wore the other one as like a pair. So I have one knit sock and one crochet sock that I wore together when I went to Rhinebeck, and I have not cleaned them yet. I'm kind of behind on my pile of things to clean. I made them match visually, so you could do that. You could have a knit sock and a crochet sock, but I really just wanted, no matter what craft you do, that you could get the same look. And so that was my goal in designing these. It was a lot of work, definitely more work to do the crochet sock than the knit sock, but I'm really proud of myself for how they are. And though I was slightly traumatized after working on 2 patterns at the same time on this very strict deadline for sock week. I think I'm finally recovered a little bit from this testing experience, and I think I'm ready to design another pattern. Doing 2 patterns at the same time, do not recommend. That was a lot of work and it took a lot out of me, but I'm proud of these designs and I'm proud of how they are. Let's see, the yarn that I used. Oh, I do remember. I pulled it from a local yarn store. I just needed to find something. Raven Frog Fibers in the color Denim and Cabin. I can't remember. Wow. Something along those lines. The next pattern that I worked on was the Blueberry Waffle Socks. I can't remember who the author is, but it's a free pattern online in like the web archives. So I'll link down below so you can find it because it was a little tricky to find. I just knit this sock to pattern. It's a DK weight pattern, but you'll see the foot just feels really short, and that's because it's a little bit loose on me. And so to counteract that, I just made a shorter sock so then it like stretches this way and then it's a little bit tighter. So not my favorite fit, but then I understood the pattern and what would fit me better, and I have modified it since then in other ways because it's not a hard pattern. It's just like this fun like waffly texture. For my Desert Vista Dye Work socks for June, I knit, this is the color Wine Country. Didn't use a contrast at all. I just knit them, doing something simple. Heel flap and gusset. I really like these colors. Super pretty. I think I saw Made by Maddie working on this exact same color palette, and I was like, tell me where you got that. And she told me the colorway. So I made sure the next time I bought from Desert Vista Dye Works, I got them. The next pattern I finished was the More You Gnome by Sarah Shira, and this was part of her Gnome Mystery Knit Along, and this was one of my goals for 2023 to participate. He's so cute. And you know what? This yellow color and this pink color are both Busy Stitch Co. leftovers from a mystery bundle that I bought. I was really trying to use up some stash. And then the white, who even knows? I think it might have been Stroll in Natural or White or something like that. I don't know, but he's a cutie. I like his little feetsies and his little arms. This was kind of fun to work up the hat. He's got a cute little tassel and a giant nose. So these gnomes bring me a lot of joy. They're really fun to work on as like a mystery knit along, and they're a really fun way to use up scraps that aren't socks. And so I've got a collection of gnomes over there. Final pattern for June that I made was the yarn Cozy Lite. Again, the knit version. This is opposite color palette wise to the other one that I did. So I don't know if you noticed on that one, I had the like rainbow color on the I-cord, the first one, and in this one I have the light color on the I-cord and the rainbow on the whole thing. It had some interesting color pooling. I also tried doing something different with the cables, and I kind of like alternated the cables, but it made them less prominent and they kind of disappear in this variegated colorway, so they kind of weren't worth it, but it's just like a small make. It was something to experiment with. We are halfway through the year. All right, so for July, I finished The Perfectionist Trap by Casey Knits. I used the colorway Unicorn Dreams 2.0 from Kimber's Cozy Creations. Sorry, my brain is like flickering out. I'm having a hard time thinking. I love this colorway. It's beautiful. This pattern was really nice that I could just sit on and work on it. I could easily alternate 2 skeins to kind of mix up the color pooling. It's beautiful in every color and like style of dye for the yarn that I've seen possible. Would be a great fit for like anything. I think it's DK weight. Again, I used 2 skeins and I just knit to the end of my skeins. It was really easy to adapt and just finish whenever I was done. I like this slip stitch detail, but it was mostly garter, so it was really easy mindless knit that I could do when things were just stressful. Could just put in a few stitches on it, and it was really easy to pick up and put down. So it took me a little bit, but I enjoyed every minute of it. I tested another pattern for Northwoods Knit Co. for Carly Perrins. This is the Stripes for Days sock. I did the cuff down sock. This is part of the Vanilla Plus sock like pattern. She sells most of her sock patterns in pattern bundles. So there was like maybe 3 patterns within this bundle. So I did Stripes for Days within this pattern bundle. And you'll see I did this like garter ridge in it. It was like an add-on for this Vanilla Plus sock. I used Kimber Cozy Creations again for this. And this color, it's called Fresh Bouquet is the main color, and the minis, so pretty. I don't know if the minis had name, but there's like this mint green and this like rosy pink. I love every single one of these colors. Again, I don't think that like a fish lips kiss heel or like a short row heel is exactly the right fit for me. I definitely had to do some modification based on like how long I wanted the length of the sock to be, but it was not too hard to do, and I managed to make the sock symmetrical from like top to bottom, which I really like. I've also got my Desert Vista Dyeworks socks for July. This colorway is called Pick Some Peppers, and this is a pretty short sock because you know what? I was getting really sick of working on a Desert Vista Dyeworks sock every single month without fail, and I couldn't like get ahead if I wanted to. I was stuck with socks or maybe an occasional hat, and it was getting old. So the minimum was 3 inches. So there you go, that's like 3 inches, maybe like 3.5 inches. And I did a blueberry waffle socks type of texture. So I modified the blueberry waffle socks pattern to use with fingering weight yarn. I used like a charcoal mini, easy pattern. I think that, oh, I also did only 60 stitches instead of 64. And I found that I liked how that fit better. And so that's something I experimented a little with this year. The 60 stitch count for fitting my foot and leg a little better for my gauge. The last pattern I finished in July was actually one I can't share with you because my daughter's currently wearing them, which is a win because she hasn't wanted to wear them the whole time since I've made them, but she was okay with me putting some cozy socks on her. This is the Athenaeum socks, a test pattern that I did for Kelly Menzies. I used Alexandra the Art of Yarn for this. I purchased this colorway from Wasatch and Wool when I did the yarn crawl, the Utah yarn crawl, and I was able to make socks for me and for my daughter. I'll talk about my socks in a second, but her socks I made, and I just fell in love with this pattern. It was not too hard. It was definitely like vanilla plus level, but every detail in the sock was really intentional. I really liked how the heel flap kind of continued the same texture that you see throughout the sock. It was just very mindful, the whole sock pattern. So if you really like a well-written sock pattern, highly recommend this one. And I loved it so much that I decided to make it for myself too. I didn't have enough yarn to make socks taller than these, but I was able to make some like ankle length shorty socks for myself so that my daughter and I match. So you can kind of see now what that texture looks like, and how the heel flap matches and like the texture kind of pulls that texture down. Again, all the details in the sock are amazing. It was such a fun knit. I really enjoyed it. Not too hard, but also really intentionally designed. So I really appreciated that about Kelly's design. And that pair of socks I made in August. Another pair of socks I made in August for my Desert Vista Dyeworks socks, again, because I was getting really tired of this, but I wanted to finish out the year because I get a free exclusive skein for finishing off all 12 months of the year. So I wanted to do something different. I decided that I wanted to try some color work. And so I modified the Comfy Cacti socks pattern from Emma Janet of Bloom Creates. And here it is. I had this vision in mind, so I looked on Ravelry and I found that this sock pattern, the Comfy Cacti socks, was exactly the right kind of motif I was looking for. So I purchased the pattern. I knit the sock, just my own sock recipe, but then I followed Emma's pattern for just this portion of the sock. And I think it turned out perfectly. Like, I could not have planned this, where it looks like all the cacti are just like sitting at the edge of the dirt. I don't know why the sky is green, but that means the contrast is perfect. It worked out amazingly. And these are like a little bit tight to get on because of the color work. I'm like so proud of these. Like, it's amazing. Like, I could not have planned how they worked out. I really like the colors. I just thought it would be fun. The colorway from Desert Vista Dyeworks is called Abstract Cacti, and so having like a little cactus motif on it was perfect. And then this is maybe the biggest FO that I had this whole year. I finished Viking, which is a cardigan by Martin Story for my husband. Ta-da! I'm showing it to you backwards so you can see that texture. This is so hard to show, and I don't even have a great picture at the moment. Maybe I can try to get a picture before I publish this video so I can throw it in. But look at that cool texture. It's almost like patchwork style with some cables and some stockinette sections. It was made in pieces. It took a long time from December until August, and I'm really proud of this design. Definitely part of my top 10 makes of the year. My husband adores this. He wears it all the time. He'll even wear it in bed, like in his pajamas before he goes to bed, and he'll put it away before he actually goes to bed. But he'll wear it to church, he'll wear it around the house, he'll wear it to bed, like he'll wear it anytime, anywhere. He adores this, and so that makes me feel so much better about making the time to make this for him. It just warms my heart to see something that I put a lot of time and effort into be loved so much. It makes me feel like my expression of love is being loved and shows expression of love from me in return, if that makes sense. I used Wool of the Andes, worsted in the color Delft Heather, so it's a little bit more rustic, but definitely a good budget-friendly yarn if you are looking for something like that. It looks like in September, I only knit socks, so this is kind of fun. I did another pattern test for Carly Perrins of Northwoods Knit Co. These are the Sunday morning socks, cuff down, and she has a DK design of this pattern. This is fingering weight. She was doing finger weight patterns for this pattern set. And it's got this really cool like slip stitch waffle texture that took a little while to make, but I adore this yarn. This is Coast to Coast Yarn Co. in the colorways Unexpected Friendship and Loyal Companion. And they're just like, I don't know why I wanted like cream socks. Cream socks just felt really cozy for me for a Sunday morning. All right, another test knit is the Feathertail socks from Mahuga Canyon Kim Jackson. And if you've read Fourth Wing, then you know all about feathertails. It's a type of dragon, puppy dragon, baby dragon, cute dragon. And while this color doesn't necessarily scream dragon, you'll notice that this has like a bunch of speckles of like rosy pink and like a golden yellow. And so I thought the golden yellow kind of tied it in to the cover of Fourth Wing. And I also just like picked a bunch of yarns from my stash that felt like baby dragon to me. If I remember correctly, I think she's like a golden color. And so I just pulled a bunch and like pastels were calling to me. And so it felt like this one would be appropriate. This color is from Made by Haley Bailey and it's called Leptopoma, which is inspired by a snail. This is a fun sock pattern to do. Let me show you kind of the texture from the front. It's got lace, it's got cables. And so I'm finding that these like multi-textured socks are like really fun for me to do, so I should definitely do more of them. All right, my final finished object for September was my Desert Vista Dye Works socks. This is another DK weight sock for Desert Vista Dye Works, and this is the color Blue-Footed Booby, like the bird. This blue is like super bright and electric, which was really fun to do. I just decided to do, I think it's called a partridge heel, where instead of having all the slip stitches line up vertically, you kind of alternate them, so it's a little bit of a different texture. So that was fun just to do something a little different, nice and cozy, nice and quick, as a DK sock is. We are getting to the end of the year. We are now in October, and in October I got to go to Rhinebeck, and I also went to Wollenfolk. This was a fun trip to go visit my family who lives in New York, and it was really fun to go with my mom, and also with like my dad and my brother and my little family. Like we all went together, but it was really for me and my mom to go. And so it was a really fun opportunity. I'm so glad I went in general to spend some time in the area that weekend. And I love New York in the fall. It's my favorite season. It was just great to be back there. I would love to be back there again, hopefully when it's not raining. But even with everything going on with the festivals of the area, I was still able to finish a few things in October. My first FO of October is the Rhinebeck Doodle Cowl, which I tested for Jamie Lomax of Pacific Knit Co. and I got to bring with me. It was a little too warm to wear it, but I had it like slung on my purse so I could still show it off. Cute little llamas, some leaves, scarves, apples, little sheepies. This is a really cool design. Some yarn, more sheepies, all sorts of fun little motifs. She has a huge collection of doodle patterns, so you can kind of mix and match whatever you like, but I'm glad I could test that out for her. It's nice and cozy. It's the smallest size, so it is really like cozy on your neck. And I used Cascade 220 yarn, so it's a little bit woolly. Wasn't too hard to knit with, though it was a little trickier for me at this gauge in color work. I kind of was a little bit slower than I had anticipated to work on this. I had to work really hard to get it done by the deadline, but I did. And I'm really proud with how it turned out. I also finished 2 hat patterns while I was at Rhinebeck, while I was in New York. And let's see, the first one was my October DVD pattern. This is another Musselburgh by Ysolda Teague. And this yarn is called Jobs. It's based off of a movie about Steve Jobs, I think. But it's got gray stripes and it's got these like multicolored speckled stripes. So the gray definitely tones down the multicoloredness, but it is also still a really fun colorway. I wore this to Rhinebeck and a lot of people commented on it and people really liked this hat. So it was a good move. I just kind of threw it on because I wasn't wearing a lot of knitting that first day that I went. And so it's a winner. It's a fun hat. little toned down from super bright and crazy. But again, I found my fit that I like for the Musselburgh, and so I really like how this one fits. The other hat that I finished while I was in New York for Rhinebeck weekend stuff was a Harlow by Andrea Mowry, and I used Coast to Coast Yarn Co. Let's see. This color is called Polypore. This is from the Mushroom collection, and this color is called Earthen. My only problem with this was that before I blocked it, my brioche was kind of slanting. And so I didn't know if I needed to measure along that slant, because I didn't know if that was like common or if that was a me problem, or if I should just measure the height. And so I ended up making my hat a little bit longer than I typically like to wear. And so even though I was hoping for like a slouchy hat, it's a little too slouchy for me. And so I've been rolling up the brim, which isn't the worst thing. But I hope to make this pattern again and redeem myself, make it a little shorter, make it something that I'm gonna wear even more often. November, after all the chaos of traveling in October and doing all that, and before the chaos of December stuff with the holidays and Vlogmas and whatnot, I only finished one pattern. And this, my Desert Vista Direct socks for November. This is the Autumn Rainbow set. I used like a half skein set of this stripy colorway and of this gray. They came together. And so this is the Rainbow Connection sock pattern by Kitten. And I actually really like these. I like how they fit. I like this fun slip stitch detail. I really felt like I didn't have the capacity to work on a busy sock, but I also was so sick of stockinette socks that I needed something different to finish out this Desert Vista Dyeworks Monthly Sock Club. So this is what I came up with, and I'm happy with it. I'm happy with how it turned out. December ended up turning out more prolific than I anticipated, actually. I had 6 finished objects in December, so it was a good way to end off the year strong. And this was partly because I just prioritized more knitting, and with like all my Vlogmas content, I ended up knitting a little bit more. And I also had a couple easier makes too that didn't take super long. I finished a test knit that I started in July. This is the Vortex Socks by Carrie Cogan Brown. And I just put these on the back burner because I wanted to work on other things. And so that's what took them so long. I honestly took less than a week to knit the second sock once I just cast it on and like worked on it and made it a priority. So there you go. Second sock syndrome, man. This yarn is from Backcountry Knitter. It's called Watermelon Soiree. And this color is called Dragon Fruit. My next finished object for December was the Maven Top by Rachel Raimo. And this used the colorway Teeny Button Wednesday in a Cafe, which is Taylor Swift inspired. I alternated skeins for this. And it's got this fun, really simple texture with a little bit of pearl bumps going through it. But it's a nice neutrally color. I wanted a breezy t-shirt type of a top that I can wear when it's warmer outside and still rep my knitting. And this definitely fits the bill for this. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I also refinished a finished object, and I hadn't actually mentioned this as a finished object earlier in the year, but it was finished. Like all my ends were woven in, it was blocked and everything, and I realized it was too short. I needed to add more length, and I made a point in December to try and finish it for real this time. This is the Oat Sweater by This Bird Knits. I really love this lace detail on the sleeve. There are 3/4 length sleeves. It's a little bit of a higher neck than I think I would typically choose, but I think it fits me really well. This is also teeny button in the color Bartok, and I added like 3¼ inches right here-ish. I did some sweater surgery, which I regret. It was very tricky because I had alternated yarns throughout, and so it was a lot more of a mess than I anticipated when I set out to do some sweater surgery, but it all worked out in the end. Got everything grafted together with only some minor issues. My next finished object for December is my Desert Vista Fabric socks for December. Yes, I finished every single month, so I hit my goal for the year, which I'm really excited about. This uses the colorway Holiday Stripes Thin, and I did a video in Vlogmas where I attempted to knit this whole pair of socks, DK weight, but a whole pair of socks in a day. And you'll have to check that out to see how far I got on that day, but I am proud with how I did. Did way better than I did the first time I tried that challenge of knitting a pair of DK socks in a day. Though this was a vanilla sock pattern. The other pattern the first time was not vanilla. So a little bit confounded, but I made sure to clear my schedule and focus on knitting these socks, and that made a big difference. Yes, these are DK, nice and cozy. If I flip them around, you don't even see that random green stripe. They turned out really well. Perfect for the holidays. I didn't end up wearing them in December just because it actually wasn't as cold as it normally is. I don't know, like we hardly got any snow. It maybe like dusted us once or twice, and so it just didn't feel like winter as much. Now we need to be cozy. I woke up and it was 12 degrees Fahrenheit, so time for all the cozy socks for this part of the winter at least. Another pair of cozy DK White socks that I knit were the Freckled Whimsy Advent socks, and this was really fun if you want to do an Advent but you don't want to have like 24 different mini skeins, or you don't want a really big project to work on. These are perfect for that. I did toe up socks so that I could better figure out how long I needed to make things, because I wanted my socks to have all 24 colors featured in them. I did not want to get to my toe and realize I was like 2 colors short or something. And so I had started knitting from the top of the sock, started using a contrast color, figured it wouldn't work as well, so I started from the toe, did toe up socks, and knit. Added the heel when it was ready. I did the heel flap and gusset, but upside down. I followed the general structure of my shark bite socks, because those are toe up, in order to make sure I get like the gusset placed in the right spot on my foot anatomically, and it worked out really well. I feel like they fit well. They're a little bit taller than most socks I like to make, but they're not outrageously tall. I can still definitely wear them and enjoy them, and they fit me good. So I'm happy with how they turned out. And then my final finished object for 2023 is the No Matter What Mystery Gnome Knit Along from Sarah Shira. Again, I did another gnome knit along, and this came with 2 little guys, though they're technically only 1 finished object. They're so cute. So this is a snowman, and this is Mr. Knightley after he's been fixed. Through magic, he turns into this snowman, and through magic again, they turn him back into Mr. Knightley, but he is a little bit changed. He's got some snow magic, and he's also got these little snowball hands. Super cute, super cozy. These are tinier than my other gnomes, and so it makes sense that there were 2 of them. It worked out really well, and I'm glad I finished these by the end of the year. I spent the first half of the month trying to catch up on the Advent, and the second half I was able to do things on a day-to-day basis, which was really fun to be able to participate in an Advent way rather than doing it after the fact. So I'm glad I was able to catch up and focus on these for the second half of the month. All right. Now it's time to talk about some stats that we've got. I made 53 total items in 2023, which was more than I thought I could make when I started working full-time and things got really busy, but I made a lot. I made 5 garments. As far as like neck accessories, shawls, cowls, scarves, things like that, I also made 5 of those. I made 7 hats. And then I had 29 socks, which makes up 56% of everything I made. 29 pairs, that's a lot. I made 2 different toy projects, both gnomes, and then I had 5 other accessories between mittens and yarn cozies and things like that. When comparing my purpose for making the pattern, whether it was a test knit, whether it was my own design, or whether it was just a project for fun, I did 14 test knits, and 7 of my makes were designs of my own. And then I had 31 fun projects. So I worked on more tests than I thought. A lot of them were sock tests, and a lot of them were just pulled from my stash. When I saw that these test calls were opening, I felt like I couldn't commit to a lot of bigger tests, but I could commit to something smaller for sure. And socks are a really easy project for me to bring to work. Sometimes if I commute part of the way, then I can sit and knit for that. If I'm on my lunch break, I can knit. If I'm working a night shift and my patients are hopefully sleeping, I can do some knitting then. And if I'm doing any like education or meetings or working on like training modules on the computer or something, those are all times when I can bring my knitting and work on things. And so socks are a really good portable project for me to work on, even with me going to work full time. Comparing knit projects and crochet projects, I actually had 7 crochet projects in the year, which at first glance I kind of forgot about, but that means I had 46 knit projects. I definitely leaned way more into knitting. I really enjoyed knitting. That's just a skill that I've learned kind of recently, and so I'm just running with it, because if that's what I want to make, then I should just make what makes me happy. Though I still do really enjoy to crochet, and I have made time to make a few things. I definitely design more crochet than I do in knitting, because I'm more comfortable with crochet from that perspective, but I do hope to make more crochet in 2024. In 2023, I had 9 designs that were published. What? And some of them I haven't shown you because I made them before 2023. So I actually had 4 designs featured in a book in 60 quick crochet projects. I had 4 designs featured in this book. I'll pop up the pictures here so you can see. So I made those in 2022, at the beginning of 2022, I think, if I remember correctly. And then at the end of 2022, I also designed a project for a magazine for Crochet Foundry. And this was my garden bed blanket, which I need to self-publish. I've been behind on that, but that is on my to-do list eventually, to self-publish it on my shops too. So those 5 projects were things that I made prior to 2023. In 2023, I had 4 independently published patterns: the Wonderland hat, the Sweet Pea small shawl, and the Shark Bite socks, both crochet and knitting versions. So 4 designs, definitely less than I've done in other years, but I'm proud of what I have designed, and I needed a break from designing after doing 2 pattern tests at the same time. That was a lot. It was a lot of peopling that had to be done and lots of work to get things ready, and I made it, but I was a little burnt out. So I took a break and kind of did things for me for a little bit, but I think I'm ready to do some more designing. I set some goals in 2023 to make 23 specific projects in 2023, and I fell very short. And a lot of it is because I made these goals end of December, beginning of January, and then in February, I got a full-time job as a nurse, and I have to travel an hour minimum to work each way. And so that's like 42 plus hours of my life spent every week related to work. And so my goals needed to shift in what my making looked like for the year. And so I'm okay that I didn't reach a lot of my goals for 2023 because my season of life changed drastically at that point in time. But in looking at those 23 projects that I made a goal for, I made 8 of them, made and finished 8 of those projects. And I started one of those projects. It's still a WIP, long term. Hopefully I can finish it this year. The July socks. If I finish them by July, that would be amazing, because it's been a few Julys that I've missed the mark on those. And that leaves 14 projects that I have not even touched. So far cry from 23 from my list. I made more than 23 items, but I listened to myself in what I wanted to make and didn't make myself do these goals. And I made the things that made sense for me. And a lot of that was smaller projects. Looking into 2024, how I want my goals to be, I mentioned this in my most recent podcast episode that you can watch up here, but I really don't want to focus on specific patterns because, again, life changes a lot, and I know that my hours for work are going to change a little bit coming up soon, but I'll still be working quite a bit, and I still have other obligations going on. So I don't want to specify 24 specific patterns I want to follow, because I know that in the moment, it'll be kinder to myself to just make what is inspiring me in the moment. So as far as 2024 goes, some goals that I have are to make 24 projects using stash yarn. I've got quite the stash. I did get a bigger bookshelf to fit this space. I can't quite fit 4 cubes in this like little space with this column here. So I just got it a little bit taller to fit my yarn a little bit better. And I would love to work on more stash projects, trying to use things up, trying to volunteer for more pattern tests that I can use my stash yarn for. I have lots of patterns in mind and things I'm excited about. So wanting to use some stash yarn, that leaves me room to still make things with newer yarns, but I want to make a point to use my stash yarn and to use it when it's still inspiring me, instead of letting it linger for a long time. So that's something I want to make sure that I do. I also would love to try and maybe hop on the bandwagon isn't the right term, but if there's a cool pattern that comes out that people are excited about, that I'm excited about, I want to join in and I want to make it when other people make it. And so I want to, instead of putting a new pattern on the bottom of my to make list, I want to work on it when I want to work on it. And so if something new comes out that I'm excited about, I want to make time to work on it and allow myself to do that. Other than that though, I don't really have a lot of goals for 2024. More of seeking balance and listening to myself and what I want and what I need, and making time for all the things that bring me joy. So let's answer a few questions from Instagram that I got about my year of making in 2023. So let's compare. The month I made the most was in January. I had 9 finished objects. And then the month I made the least was November, 1 finished object. And that doesn't mean that that's all I worked on. It definitely had whips throughout the year, but that's finished objects. And in November, I was trying to get some content ready for Vlogmas. I was recovering from traveling for Rhinebeck. I was getting ready and gearing up for December and everything that entailed. Work was also really, really hard that month. And so that's fine. It's okay to not have any finished objects in a month, and that's totally fine. I just thought it would be interesting to look at what my most makes in a month were and what my least makes in a month were. So 9 and 1, January and November. But typically I had around like 3 to 5 makes in any given month for most months of the year. Here's some questions. My favorite make of 2023 was definitely my ranunculus. I mentioned it in my top 10 list that I came out with in Vlogmas. It was just super, super fun to make. It was super quick. It had a little bit of interest in the yoke, but also had a lot of easy stockinette knitting. And so it was a really good mix of everything that I needed in a knitting project at the time. It was really fun. It was really quick. And that is also really nice, having that instant gratification. My favorite yarn that I worked with would probably be Red Door Fibre Studio. I worked with their sock base for the first time on my Hearth socks on this pattern. And I don't know what it is about this sock base, but like that tension was so good. This yarn felt so good to knit with. I don't know what it is about the sock base. So I need to get more from Kate. I do really appreciate her colorways. A lot of her colorways are more dark and moody compared to what I typically like. I do like a lot of pastels. This definitely fits in with what I like, purples and pinks too. I need more from her because I loved working with this space. It was so nice. It was such a nice knitting experience to work with it. My favorite stash yarn I have is actually also Red Door. Let me pull it out for you. When asked this question, I took this to mean the yarn that I'm most excited to use from my stash. And I would say it's probably the Emily Henry collection from Red Door. And yes, I got everything because it all works together really well. So there's blue here. Let's see, there's some yellow in this. Green. Oh, I can't hold all these. And then this. So they all kind of like fade and work really well together. I can't hold all those yarns at the same time. I love Emily Henry's books. I've read all 4 of her contemporary novels, though I do want to reread People We Meet on Vacation because I read that a few years ago. And I read everything else in 2023 from her contemporary romances, and I loved them. And I would love to make like a really cozy book blanket with these. This is Surrey, and so I want to hold this with something like Stroll or Wool of the Andes, or you know, something to kind of tone down these colors a little bit in like a white or like a light gray or something to kind of meld all these colors together. The problem is I just can't quite figure out what I want to do. I thought about doing like a track my reading type of a blanket, but I am not feeling the vibes of this as like a track different genres I'm reading. I think I want to do like either like a stripy blanket or different quadrants or sections or something. I can't quite decide what I want to do, but I would love to make a nice cozy snuggly blanket to curl up in when I am reading on the couch or in a chair or something. That is like my goal, and this yarn makes me so happy and I'm so excited, and I need to figure out exactly what I want to do so I can just cast on, because this would be so fun. All right, next question. Favorite pattern writer? I'd say for 2023, my favorite pattern writer would be Carly Perrins, because I tested 3 of her sock designs this year, definitely the most I tested for any one designer. And I really like how she has multiple patterns in her like pattern sets. And so it's really fun to be able to say like, ooh, like I want to make this one and like just buy them all together. And so it's a really fun experience to test for her. You get the pattern that you tested, like that bundle pattern, and you also get a coupon code to get another pattern or pattern bundle that you wish. She's got a lot of pattern designs in her store, and so there's lots to choose from. And so I've always had a really great experience testing with her. I would say she's probably my favorite pattern designer. And while I've made some designs from some bigger name designers this past year, I love Carly. She's really great to work with. She's a really good designer, and I've enjoyed testing for her. And I feel like the quality of her patterns when it comes to the testers is already like tech edited and well thought out. And so even if there are minor issues, they're really easy to iron out and figure out. My most and least favorite projects to work up. I mean, my ranunculus is up there. I also mentioned my perfectionist trap, and that was just such a joy to knit on, and I didn't care how long it took to get through that because it was just really enjoyable and something nice and simple for my brain to handle when I just needed to put in some stitches and didn't want to be bogged down by something complicated. So maybe those would be my favorite makes to make. My least favorite, as I'm looking through everything I made, something that is a common occurrence with things I don't enjoy making, they take a while, or they feel like they take a while. So my Find Your Fade was massive. It felt like it took forever to work on that. Another thing that felt like it took forever was my Rhinebeck Cowl by Jamie Lomax. And I think that's just because of the yarn that I chose was not a good fit for me and my knitting style. So I think it would have been better if I had something more superwash and more silky. It would have been a more fun knitting experience, especially because I've made Jamie's patterns before, these doodle patterns, and I used Swish yarn, which is the DK weight superwash yarn from Knit Picks, and it was such a dream to knit up. It was so fun, it was so quick, and I think that just the texture of the yarn that I chose like was not a good fit for that project and for my knitting style, for my ultimate like joy and speed, if that makes sense. So even though I really like the end design and I really like the colors I picked, I'm really glad that I made that. It was kind of a pain to work on because it was just like not a good match between me, yarn, pattern. All right, I think that's everything for talking about my 2023 making year in review. Lots of knitting, a little bit of crochet, some designing, quite a few test knits, and lots of socks. Thank you so much for joining me along. Definitely make sure to ask any other questions you have for me down below, and I love to interact with you down there. I'll definitely answer any questions that you have and have a little discussion. Let me know your favorite makes that you made down below, and also what were your least favorite makes that you made? Was it more about the outcome of what you made or about the process? Because for me, if the process is like long and hard, then that's what makes it a least favorite for me. But I know some people are more product knitters, and so you might not really like how something turned out. So let me know down below your favorite and your least favorite makes of 2023. And here's to another year of making. Until next time, happy making. Bye!